Well, hello everyone. This is Rick Florence with Salons of Spirit. It's been a while since I had done any videos, and hopefully we'll be back into doing some more. But lately, there's been a lot of talk about the Constitution, about the country, the founding of America, and that sort of thing. And it's sad that we don't have more knowledge of our history in the United States. Now, I might have talked about this before, but just in case I didn't or you haven't heard it, you hear people saying, "Oh, the founding of America, the founding of the United States, was all in 250 years ago." And so the funny thing is that Americans don't even know their history at all. There's three fundamental documents that have been used and have created the Constitution and the current system that we have. Really, there's probably some further ones because they had things happening in the Civil War time that changed everything. But so the idea was this: the Declaration of Independence. If you read it, all you got to do is read a little bit of it. And the reason I'm doing some of this is because too many people won't read. They just think it's too much work and too much effort. These documents are short. They're not very long. And it's rather interesting if you think about what it is that they're discussing. So it says right here, it says the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. So at that time they were colonies. And now they're saying they're 13 United States of America. Now the U is small letters, it's not capitalized. So that is in English, that just means they're united. It doesn't mean that they are an entity yet. So they're united. They're states. States, the word states is capitalized. So it's the specific states. It's these particular 13 ones that we're talking about. And of America. And America is a noun for the continent, for the land there. So it's America. There's a colony of the continent. So the use of the English language is correct. The grammar and the capitalization, all that stuff, they did it correctly. And then they talk about why it is they're saying, hey, we're done with the king. And really, my understanding basically boils down to the fact that the king violated the English Constitution. And that Constitution's name is the Magna Carta. And the rules and traditions that have happened between the king and the people for all these years. And there's a thing called the law of the land. And the law of the land is different than the law of the sea. And so if you read, it doesn't say law of the sea, but it talks about the things that the king did. And the king did it, which are laws or powers that are reserved during wartime, and using the law of the sea and the admiralty law onto the people. And things like they're quartering, they put their quartering soldiers in houses of people when they ain't paying them or anything. You just have you take care of this soldier. And there'd been a war with the Indians, the French and Indian War, that was not that long in the past. And at the end of the war, they're supposed to say, "Hey, we're not gonna do this war thing anymore. You get all your rights back," because it's an emergency during the time of the war. And that kind of is interesting that they use the word emergency, or that it is an emergency, because boy, we sure hear that a lot from our government in the past. And as I've been watching politics for all these decades, that word is used more and more and more all the time. Everything's a freaking emergency. It's like we're completely being run by emergency and there's no constitution still. And I think that's really pretty accurate considering the money. We've talked about the money. And a lot of other things that the government's doing. Now today I heard well, let's go back to the documents for a minute, and then we'll come back into the video or the information I heard today, and it made me think about certain things. So we have the Declaration of Independence, and they said basically we're done. We're countries, individual countries. There's 13 of us. We're all joining together to do this in a meeting together, but we're not doing it together. So what I'm saying is that they didn't create a country separate from their colony. Their colony was, everybody's saying our colonies are all together and we're kind of joining together to fight your ass if you try to come over here and make us stay as part of England and the, what do you call it? The kingdom. So anyway, they said they did that. And then in here, they describe what your rights are. They acknowledge that, hey, our rights don't come from the king. Now, if you're a subject, your rights come from the king. Really, your privileges. They basically define that rights come from God, your creator. Whoever the creator is, that your rights come from them. So if there was nobody else on this whole planet besides you, and you were manifestly created, boom, there you are landing on the earth. Well, God put you here, and he put you here with certain capabilities. Now, the fact is, he put two of you there, or more of you. So if there's Adam and Eve, I don't know about buying into that, just two Adam and Eves, but it doesn't matter. Let's say there's two people. So now, all of a sudden, you got situations where, they're going to interact with each other, just like all the animals and everything that's on the earth all do. You see them out there fighting with each other and chasing each other and playing with each other and doing all kinds of stuff, being kind to each other. So that situation is set up by the creator. All right. And as a result, you have to look at it, since humans are logical, they can think, they're a higher level intelligence than the animals are, and generally speaking, at least in how this 3D world works and the ability to think the way that we do. Although it seems like sometimes animals are a lot smarter than we are. But anyway, so they said, hey, we don't like this old system where it's been going. It's always going by who kills who and who has more guns and who's bigger and badder and takes everything over and controls everybody else. That's pretty much the way the whole system worked. Now, the church got involved. In the Western world, we call the Western world, they call it Christendom. The Pope, the king's got to say, man, we got to have more legitimacy than just the fact that we're, killing everybody, and if you don't like what we do. So they got with the church got involved, and the church now declares, the Pope or the church says, hey, you're the king. We're going to give you the divine right, because we get it from God, Jesus. Jesus was given it to by God. So according to the Bible, now we're giving you the power to be the king. So they did that with several different kings. And so the Declaration of Independence, so they were saying basically, that system isn't any good and we don't like that. Because it's really turned into whoever is the big, baddest guy out there is going to get to be the king or the ruler or the emperor. And if you notice, despite the fact that the Pope's supposed to be saying, well, this guy in Spain is the king of Spain, and this guy is the king of Portugal, and this guy's the king of England, and maybe there's other, I don't know, if Italy, I suppose, is involved in Rome. The problem is that they're still killing each other, and they're still fighting over stuff that very obviously the Bible says you can't do. Thou shalt not steal. Oh, we're over there going to kill them because they did this, and it's revenge and all this. And he says, revenge is mine, saith the Lord. Not really when you talk about kings, it ain't. So anyway, so the Declaration of Independence, and we might go over this in the future, but I just want to point it out for the fact of what that document did and its role in the world, in setting up this country in particular, not just the world, but focusing on the United States. So the United States says, we're done. We're creating our own countries. Now, by that time, they all had legislators already, and they had governors already, and they had the people voting and a methodology. Everything was already operating. So with them just say, basically, we're not listening to the top guy anymore. Like if all the states just decided tomorrow, okay, we're done with the United States. We're dissolving it. And we're not playing that anymore. We're going to do something else. And they walk off, and they already have their own governmental structure all set up inside their borders, all the way down to the city level. Now, the cities are corporations, but and they get their authority from the state. And but the county is not a corporation. It's kind of common law. So the county has got a legislative body. They've got a sheriff, of the county who enforces the law. He hires deputies. And the system works like that. It has its own court system and everything else. So the United States federal government went away tomorrow, we wouldn't really care. I mean, yeah, it'd be disruptive to everything, but it wouldn't really. We could still function, and as an individual state, even an individual county could do the same thing, all the way down to the city. It's possible. Now, the city's going to be difficult because the cities are real limited in there, and they get some special power they probably shouldn't have. If there was really a common law circumstance. But so anyway, the Declaration of Independence. It's the one that says, hey, we have rights. We hold these truths to be all self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Certain ones. Now, among them, these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, see, they're saying among the rights. These things are, but there could be some other rights. They don't know for sure. They haven't even thought of it at the time. And then they said you have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, I'd like to know, for one thing, how many people think you got liberty when you're paying tax on your compensation? Basically, you're paying as if you were a slave. The slave master is just not taking as much, and we get to elect the slave master, but we know how we'd have a very limited choice. Anyway, go on. I'm going to digress and talk something about that. But anyway, they say that to secure the rights, governments are instituted among men deserving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Now, let's go to the next document. I'd like to keep going over this thing because I think it's very important to think about some of these terminologies and concepts. But let's go to the next document. All right. So when was the United States created? So see, the Declaration of Independence didn't create the United States. And even despite the fact that people are out there, oh, it's the founding of the United States. No, it's not. And it's the founding of North America. No, America was established way before that, back when they set up the continent. Now, most of us call America, we consider it just to be the United States only. But North America, South America are continents. They're modified by the word North and South. They're separated. America used to talk about the whole New World: South America, North America, Central America. And eventually Americans just say, hey, those Americans, they're separate because the people in Canada are still under the King of England, just like Australia and New Zealand and other places around the world. They're subjects. They're not real citizens in the sense that we are citizens in the United States. We have rights they can't transgress. And when the cops do, and try to pull that game on us, we can go to court and fight them. We can go and sue them and get punished for violating their rights, and they know that, and it puts a strain on them. Now all the cops don't; they still do it. You see videos all the time. What are you doing on the sidewalk? You don't have a right to stand here. It's public property. You went and I'm videotaping this guy. Well, they're bothering them, and so you're being disorderly. I'm thinking, well, hey, I'm not disorderly. I'm standing here doing nothing, and that guy come over here and hassle me. But you don't want to fight with the people on the court out in the public. It's better just to, if they really get nasty and want to arrest you or something, well, to go let them arrest you, and then you fight it in court. You get a lot of money if you sue them on the backside if they violate your rights. There's a couple of titles. I think it's Title 32, 1983, and 1984, deprivation of rights by the state, and it's deprivation of rights by the feds. Now, you can go look that up. I don't remember. I think it's 32. It might be 30. I don't think it's 34. 34 is money and begging. But anyway, you can go look it up. It's a lawsuit you can file. And boy, every day they keep you in jail unjustly. You can get a lot of money on a lawsuit according to the statutes. Anyway, I digress. Let's go away and get back off of that. So now, so what created the United States? Well, what did that was a document that everybody thinks, the Constitution. Before we talk about the Constitution, how many times I ask people, do you think you have constitutional rights? And they go, oh, yeah. So you get your rights from the Constitution? And they go, yeah. And I go, okay, well, so they didn't have any rights before the Constitution? They don't even know when the Constitution was ratified and when it came into power, into being. So we get into conversations that way all the time. People start wondering, they haven't think about these things. They haven't understand dawned on them yet. So wait a minute, maybe we ought to be thinking about some things like this. And we have some interesting conversations. But the bottom line is the Constitution did not give you any rights. It protects your rights. Think of the government the way it's supposed to be. The government is a corporate entity, a fictional entity that was created by the people. And they use their delegated power. Because if you read the Constitution, it says that I need to look it up here. Let me look it up. Legisla. Let's find the next one. Oh, come on. Where's the next search thing? I got to scoot it up so I can see it. Okay, there we go. Okay, here it is. So they're discussing the complaints against the king. And it's not too far down in here, but you'll find this portion that says, and talking about he, the king, has refused for a long time after such dissolutions, so I don't want to go into what the dissolutions are talking about, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers incapable of annihilation have returned to the people at large for their exercise. So we can talk about this in another video, but the bottom line, what they're saying is that there's a power called the legislative power, and that's the power to make law. And that's in the hands of the king, supposedly. And then the king delegated it to the colony legislatures, and they get to exercise some of their that power that the king has. And he has the power. There is a power out there. They're saying that power exists that is called the power to create laws. And amongst the people, typically that's in the hands of the king, and it used to be. And then they had legislatures and local government in the colonies for a long time, because you got to remember, hey, they didn't come over here. It came over here in 1409. I always do it this way. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. That was the thing we were taught when we were kids. So if you want to know, well, how long has people been over here? Well, 1492. The Americas were discovered by the Europeans, and they said, oh, wow, that's a good place to go over here and get some, exploit the natural resources and all that stuff. And so you got to think, well, that's basically 1500, 16, 17, 76. That's 276 years before we had a Declaration of Independence. So they did a lot of stuff over here for 200 and something years. That's more time than the United States has been since the Declaration of Independence was signed. It's only 250 years. Well, that's 276 years from that time when Columbus came over here, and then Amerigo Vespucci, and I think there was a guy named Drake, a whole bunch of people that discovered, did come over and explored in this continent, and in the South continent, and the Central continent, and the Caribbean, and all this land that they didn't know was here. So, but the bottom line is that legislative power was now delegated, and it's in the hands of the people. So, did they exercise that power? Yeah, they did in their state, in their we call them states, but their country, because their state became the countries until a little bit later. So they said, okay, well, we got these countries now. We got an issue. We need to be able to regulate commerce and things between us, because we know it in Europe, they're always having wars all the time, and we don't want to do that over here. So we need to have, and we have some landlocked states as well. They don't have access to the oceans and whatnot. So we need to set this up so we don't have wars amongst ourselves in the future. And that's when they created an entity called the United States of America under the Articles of Confederation. Now, the Articles of Confederation were ratified, they were adopted, and they were ratified on March the 1st, 1781. So the actual birth of the United States of America is on March the 1st, not 1781, not 1770, not in 1776. So you're talking about, 5 years later, basically, a little over 5 years later, before the actual United States of America was created. And it was created as a union. It wasn't created as a central government. And they had that here, but they said, they described this as a union we're creating, and it has these capabilities. And so it says in the articles, oh, heck. All right. Yeah, let's go back over here. That's the Constitution. That's the articles. I was doing a search. I'm going to go back. Now, hang on a second. Let's begin. I don't know if this thing is paused or... Okay, so I found it. So the bottom line is that they thought they intended to get together to make a some kind of confederation among the states, and so they got together, and then when they created it with the, under the Articles, that was 1781, right, March. So that brings up the next question. Well, wait a minute. How about the Articles existed, and it said in the United States of America, the entity, the union called the United States of America, was created in the Articles. So it says at the very first of the Articles. Let's see if I can find that part. Oh, come on. Okay, to all who then presents, blah blah blah. They're saying that the name of the entity will be the new thing that they're creating is the United States of America. The is capitalized. Then United is capitalized. States is capitalized. Of is not capitalized. And America, A-M-E-R-I-C, is capitalized. So the union's name, the lawful, true union's name, is the United States of America, all caps on everything but of. If you change the letter capitalization, that ain't the same name. That's not the same entity. Now, you may be talking about it generally speaking, but when you do legal stuff, it needs to be right. If you go into court and they call you the wrong name, you can say, well, that ain't me. I'm not here talking about. They got to figure out a way to make sure they got the right guy, and it has to be correct. And so, or you can just say, well, you didn't indict the right dude because that ain't me. And if he's indicted, or if it's a court, if you're suing somebody or whatever it is. So, but it says the style of this confederacy shall be the United States of America. So, it's interesting that we don't use that. Everybody says United States. They say the United States of America. They say, well, where are you from? Oh, I'm from the United States. Well, and the is always lowercase. Why is that? Shouldn't be. The should be capitalized if it's the United States of America. We ought to all learn these things. So then we still don't have the Constitution, and our rights are, in our possession in the states, and all the states have their own constitutions that they've been operating under as colonies, and they just turn those into countries, So now the next thing we do is we say, all right, well, what about the Constitution? Now, this is an interesting part because I've noticed something reading this. And, you learn things when you just sit back and you start thinking about stuff and get rid of some of the noise that's out there and think about things. But it says, we the people of the United States, and y'all have heard this before, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice and blah, 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 do this. Here's why we're doing it. But you know what it says? In order to form a more perfect union. That means the union is modified. The Civil War, the South said, hey, you can't do this. We don't like this. We're leaving. And the North's going, you can't leave because it's a permanent, perpetual union forever and ever and ever. Even though it says it is. But how can somebody that's 1,000 years behind you make you have to debate something they come up with a long time ago and you don't get to change it? And the fact of the matter is, despite the fact the claim that the United States is a perpetual union, never that can be dissolved ever, and they had a war over it, and it didn't dissolve because, well, I don't know if it did or not. We got some real issues with how they're behaving because they sure aren't acting like they're following this law. But anyway, that's another issue for another day. But the funny thing is, it says, in order to form a more perfect union, that means they're going to change the union. Now, how can you change something that never can be changed because it's permanent? Why can't you just say, well, we're all changing it. Here's a blank sheet of paper. That's the new union. We just modified it. We formed a more perfect union. And it's a blank piece of paper, and it just says United States of America. It has no powers. And they pass that. Wouldn't that be getting rid of the union? So the concept that it's perpetual, cannot ever be destroyed, is a bunch of hooey. But that's the way they behaved, and that's the way the courts treat it. So we have to live with it for now, unless you want to have a big revolution, which I'm not interested in getting involved in anything like that, because we need to stick together. Because the house divided, divided falls, and we don't want that. House divided against itself cannot prevail. So anyway, so now we've got that. So when was that ratified? That was in 1789 or let me check. Okay, I got it. So, and I just forget it. I know it's there, but I just don't remember the odds. June the 21st, 1788. So the Constitution wasn't created until 1788. The Declaration of Independence was 1776. 1776, and that's 10 years later. That's a long time, isn't it? Everybody thinks it all comes from that. So your rights don't come from the Constitution, and you don't have constitutional rights. What you do have is constitutional protections. The Constitution is to protect your rights, which the Declaration of Independence says come from God. And it lists some of those, the real three fundamental catch-all categories: life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Well, do we have liberty when they, or we have limited liberty? We have liberty, but liberty means, to grant you some time off, basically. It's not freedom. It's not the same thing as freedom. Liberty means, you can do some things, but we give it to you, but we can take it away. You might think about those kind of words. What these words mean is important. But what everybody thinks they mean is just as important, because it's really important that we believe that and we understand it. Because that's what gives the courts legitimacy. It's why we listen to them. The judge is sitting up there by himself. If he says something that we don't like, how is he going to get it enforced? He can't. So we have to have respect and everybody agree with that. We have the sheriff and stuff like that to try to enforce it. But if enough people said, hey, we ain't doing this, it's kind of difficult for them for it to be enforced. And it makes the system extremely vulnerable. And we sure don't need to be a non-civilized and non-civilization by warring with each other like a lot of other places happen in this world right now. These are all ruled by the gun. The gun, not the people's guns that they got, but the government's guns, and the people don't got any guns. So they don't like what you say, so what? Off with your head. Then the next guy won't try to argue about that. So anyway, I thought y'all might find it interesting. The Constitution does not grant you rights. It gives citizens protections and rights, not foreigners, not anybody. It's why when people come over here and they go, oh, well, this guy's got, he's got to have due process. There is no due process guaranteed to non-citizens. You have to be part of the group. You got to be part of the system a citizen, so that you then have obligations to being that citizen, which is paying certain taxes and other things that you need to do, sitting on the jury and other things like that, and privileges like the privilege to vote. So you have rights and privileges. And your privilege is not to be taxed more than anybody else, and everybody has the same amount of taxing situation. If you go look at George Washington's, I think it was a nephew, he wrote a big treatise on the obligations, the benefits, what do they call it? Privileges and immunities of the Constitution. Thank you. Privileges and immunities. And you ought to read about that, because it says what your rights and how they're implemented under the Constitution and goes into it. And the tax thing is a big mess compared to what we're supposed to be doing. So hopefully that's going to be fixed, because Donald Trump's talking about it. And I'm happy as all get out that he's talking about that. And it looks like he wants to change it. So we just got to get people to understand it. If they don't understand, why would they be for it? Oh, we got an income tax on your paid wages because we got to build roads, even though not a dime of that money goes to pay for roads. But it's just people are so ignorant, and they're ignorant because the school systems are so crappy. And the school systems have been totally destroyed. So back to the thing about the three different documents. Now, let's see, how much time have I been on here? I've been on here 29 minutes. That's a long time. I'm going to give it another 10, 15 minutes. I like being able to watch that little recording. But so the big point of telling you about all this, and kind of two things. First off, to get some background and maybe some thinking going on. But on the other thing is also that we have all these government programs. The government is taking money from everybody and giving it to everybody else. And I can't think, it was the Tocqueville, or maybe it was not them, it might have been Edmund Burke, but there's a Frenchman that said basically The republics are destroyed when the people determine that they can vote other people's money into their pockets. And so whatever side gets over, the Democrats get in there, they tax everybody, and they put money on the shit they want to do. And they might be just taking it away from the poor. They claim they're going to get I don't even want to talk about Democrat or Republican in terms of who claims what. But all the time, it's like, we're going to tax the rich and give it to the poor. And then the Republicans go, oh, we're going to have taxes on somebody else and give it to somebody else. And we're going to move the money around, and we're going to fix everything, even though they're complete leeches. Because there's not one thing they do that's productive that helps build your economic life. Now, the president and the government can deal with foreigners, and that can be things like we have this oil situation right now. Oil prices are up because of the war. Now, I'm sitting here going, well, wait, we have our oil. How come they're getting to sell our oil over in the other season and have that affect our prices? We ought to put the wartime limit on the profits. I mean, I think you should make a profit, but they should be changed so that because it's war and it's an emergency, of course, because it's wartime, we can do something like, all right, you can make X amount of profit after you've already delivered at this level within the United States. So the United States consumes XYZ, you got to deliver that to the people, and then the extra oil you can sell on the open market internationally. And that would maybe keep our prices down. I'm not sure exactly how to implement that, but it's an idea. We should be not allowing the oil companies to profit off of the war. And they had back when this happened in the 70s, they had a windfall profits tax that they took more money from the oil companies because of the contrived shortage. Well, there wasn't a shortage, and the whole thing was about money and what you're going to be paying foreign countries for money. For their oil. Because when they went off the gold standard, well, now all of a sudden the foreigners are going like, well, we don't want paper with nothing behind it. We want gold. Because everybody said, hey, the money is supposed to be something real. I grow peaches. The peaches are valuable because you can eat them and have a healthier body. And so it's a real thing. And gold and silver are real things. But paper, Federal Reserve, IOU nothings are not real things. They're just it's just a game. It's not even different than a basketball game. Can you take points in a basketball game, run down the street and buy something with them? No, you can't do that. But, and the world's a crazy place right now. And it's because everybody's ignorant. So I'm trying to help them get people a little more knowledgeable about things. So the reason that triggered me to do this video was that I was watching some Democrats on TV complaining about, USAID money and this money and that money, and we need to give it to this group and give it to that group and all that stuff. And you've got all the Somali shit going on, and they're stealing all this money and all these things, all this fraud and all this stuff. This all has to do with the government giving charity. Now, where in the Constitution, and we'll maybe go over it here one of these days. Now, I'm going to try to get that done. But where is it? I'm going to try it. I'm going to do it at some point. Where in the Constitution does it say the government can give charity? There's a story out there about Davy Crockett, it's Sam Houston. It might have been Sam Houston. Yeah, Sam Houston, as he was a rep for one of the states up north. I don't know if it was Kentucky or I don't think it was Kentucky. I don't know. Anyway, look it up. And there's a story out there that some people now say is not really true, but bottom line was the first time the federal government gave money away to help some houses that burned in Washington, D.C. And so they burned up, and they said, oh, we got to help these poor people, and we allocate money from the government treasury. And the story goes by this guy named Bruner or Brunson, something like that. Basically ran into him when he was out campaigning, and the guy says, and he's very, and this guy was real, he really did exist. He was really against what Houston had done. And he said, well, what's the problem? And he goes, because you voted the money that didn't belong to you and gave it away for charity, which is not authorized in our Constitution, because I don't read it that way. It doesn't say anything in there about you giving charity. And so he made him feel pretty bad, and there was another vote up at one point later, and Houston gave a speech about it, and they didn't vote. They voted against it and didn't approve the money. Now it's changed. Now we just think that money is unlimited. There's money, unlimited money. Oh, let's every time we turn around, I'm going to give money to this guy, give money to that guy. And now we got fraud, and we got massive debt. Is it 19% of the budget now is going to pay interest on debt that's not even real because it's a fraud. There's no, you were not loaned anything. They try to claim that dollars are just units of just numbers like points in a ball game, and which is a bunch of crap. But that's the idea. They create a concept, and then you change the underlying, you have a word. The word means this. Oh, you know what? A man. Oh, what's a man? Oh, it could be a trans man or this kind of a man. So they take the word man and they go in here and try to redefine what it is, but they still have the same word man in the law. But then they're starting to pretend like, oh, well, it applies to all these new things that we've added or made that word mean in common language today. But that's not the way the legal system is supposed to work. It's supposed to be whatever the Congress or the legislators meant when they wrote the law, that is the meaning of it, and it never changes. And they can change the law so that it means something different, but when you put it in there, it doesn't change. It's supposed to be static. But those people say they want living laws and all that, a living constitution. Yeah, that's the direct path to tyranny, is having the living constitution. I will bump the table. Sorry about that. Anyway, so they're all arguing about this, and I want to stand up in that daggum interview and say, wait a minute, the government shouldn't be giving any charity. All these problems that's happening is because the government's giving charity. If they weren't giving away free health care, if they weren't giving away, education, they weren't giving away housing, they weren't giving away cell phones, they weren't doing all this stuff, then, these people wouldn't just be coming running in here, and if they were, they had to be, taking care of themselves. If you haven't had a chance, let's see, where are we at? Okay, we're going to quit in a minute. If you haven't had a chance, you ought to go to Ellis Island and read about and see what happened about the immigrants that came in on the boat. You came in on the boat and you were sick. You were getting back on the boat. Go back over. Couldn't come in here. If you were going to be a public charge, which means if you couldn't take care of yourself, well, the people would, even then, they still would help take care of the poor and the needy. Now, the government wasn't supposed to do that, but by that time, the government had systems and all that. There was charitable things in the communities. You had, orphanages and other types of things that, well, the public in general helped and took care of people who were destitute. Well, they didn't want any more coming in here that were destitute. So if you were destitute and didn't have a way of taking care of yourself, well, they don't want you sleeping under the bridge, downtown. So you get back on the boat and go away. Now, if you had relatives here, you had somebody put up a bond or something like that, then you would get let in. You had to have skills and stuff. They didn't just let you in just so you could not even be able to function in a society over here. And a lot of Americans don't even know it, but there was like 40 years or something after World War II that there were no immigrants at all allowed in the United States, period, none. It was a long time. I'm pretty sure it was 30 or 40 years. But anyway, that's our problem. Giving away free shit that don't belong to us. Because the government's set up to do a certain thing that's given certain powers. So we're going to talk about the Constitution and how to look at it in a future video. We're getting to be almost 40 minutes. I'm not there yet, but it's good to listen. You can listen to this video because I'm not showing anything on the screen. So I tend to like to watch videos when I'm driving on the road, and I just listen to them. But when they start saying, well, look at this picture and look at that picture, it makes it kind of difficult if you're going to drive. Then it's really smart to be looking at videos and stuff, so it can be dangerous. So anyhow, I hope y'all like my fish back here. Got my fish aquarium, it's temporary. It's pretty cool. You know what? Look, don't have to worry about the fish anymore. And it affects the camera too. That's the crazy part. There we go. Got my color back. And my little 1980s plasma light. And so I hope you guys are doing well. And I'll talk to you on the flip side. Please like and subscribe if you want. I'll try to keep putting more things. I'm not trying. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I promised somebody I'd do this. And so I'm doing it. And I hope you guys have a great day. again, that's Rick Florence of Salons of Spirit. And we're going to put this in different salons. I put them out there on the internet. I'm starting to group them. I'm putting playlists, trying to kind of put them based on subject matter. Some people probably don't care about technology and that sort of thing. Other people do. Some people want to know about spiritual stuff, which I haven't done any yet, but that's the area that I've been asked to talk about. So I'm gonna work on doing that as well. And I think now I might go look out and get the mower going and mow the grass. So you guys take it easy. And again, so like my video, please. I appreciate it. Pass the word.